We welcome Blake Petty to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here.
How was your weekend?
You know, I actually had a really, really great weekend. So my son is a 15-year-old freshman and just started on the varsity football team. Their first scrimmage was back in my hometown of Waco. So his grandparents got to go out there and see him get thrown around on the field for the scrimmage on Friday. And then we spent the weekend with them. So it was a really great weekend.
That's great. What position does he play?
He is the center. Okay. He is body type. Perfectly suited for that, and really, really enjoying his first year as a freshman in high school.
Right. Let's jump in with our icebreaker question. What is your favorite superpower?
My favorite superpower, been thinking about this a while. I think I would have to say mind control.
Okay.
Kind of the ability to understand what's going on in your head, what's going on in others' head.
Right.
That would be my choice if I could have a superpower.
Kyle uses mind control on me a lot.
I know it.
He's running the show, really. Give us 60 seconds on your road here.
Road here, as I said, grew up in Waco, actually just outside of Waco. Grew up on a ranch, farm kid, and was actually expected to go back to the farm. My brother and his family, my sister and her family, they all live with my folks on the farm. Uh-huh. I came to A&M with that intent, got into animal science, was planning on doing just that, and decided that I wanted to take a different path, got into the formation of business around technology, so commercializing new technologies. Didn't think that I would necessarily enjoy that or stay involved with it. Have been around Texas A&M in a commercialization entrepreneurship role now for over 20 years. And coming to Mays about 5 years ago, the opportunity to get involved with the Entrepreneurship Center was something I couldn't pass up. And it's been a wonderful journey around the university. I've seen lots of things. I've done some things that I realized I didn't want to do in my career, and I think I finally found my home here at the center.
Okay, let's back up to the Mike Alexander questions. How many in your family?
I've got two siblings, both of them much older than me. So my brother's 11 years older, and sister's 7 years older than me. So I kind of feel like I grew up with 4 parents.
What was your first job?
First job, actually, interestingly enough, I was a telemarketer. I had a friend who owned a company who, calling people up in the evenings, interrupting dinner, trying to sell them various things. But it was a really, really terrible job. But I learned the challenges of selling. I learned how and why you need to learn to deal with failure and how to try and calm someone down on the other end of the line when you've completely derailed their evening just to try and pester them.
What was the funniest brush off you ever got?
You know, what we learned, and it's actually a secret that I tell people who are bothered by telemarketers, when someone just hangs up on you immediately, that's an easy kill. And you move right on to the next number and you haven't wasted any time at all with that person.
Okay.
When you come across someone who knows the telemarketing business, they understand telephone sales, and they know that time is money in that job, they will ask you as many questions as possible. They will push the interview as long as possible. They will try and make you think you are about to close this sale. And when you've spent 10, 15, 20 minutes with someone and you are amped up to close that sale, and suddenly they decide to hang up on you, there's been some interesting reactions around the bullpen of telemarketing when somebody gets that done to them. So that's just a tip out there for anyone who's really wanting to mess with someone, calling them up in the evening to try and sell something.
Nice. What was your greatest challenge as a child?
Greatest challenge as a child, as the baby of the family, I certainly had lots of privileges and things that I got away with, but living on a farm and ranch as the last child in the home, I was pretty much the hired help, but the pay was terrible.
I feel like we've heard that story a few variations on that theme a few times.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
And your parents' family you grew up on a farm ranch. What did they do for a living? What was their vocation?
So my mother was a career teacher, taught her entire life. In fact, she was my sixth grade teacher, which was that was no fun. She was a wonderful teacher, and certainly I love her. But sitting behind the desk, trying to teach me things as a sixth grader, and then going home at night with your sixth grade teacher, that was that was an odd situation. My father actually spent a 30-year career with the Texas Farm Bureau. He was a representative for a number of farming initiatives across the state.
Right.
Interestingly, though, he took a hiatus in the middle of that career to join a friend in a startup company. They were actually commercializing truck camper tops. So way back when the camper top business was in its heyday, my father went into that business. That was kind of a dark period for our family because he struggled tremendously. The business didn't do well.
Okay.
My father tried really hard to be a successful entrepreneur and eventually gave up on that, returned back to the Texas Farm Bureau and learned a lot of lessons from that. But being in a farming life, that's very entrepreneurial in and of itself. And so running the ranch, working at the Farm Bureau, and trying the odd entrepreneurial adventure here and there, that's what I grew up around.
I feel like we've gotten that kind of as a recurring theme, talking about a parent starting a business that had some struggles. That seems to be, when you talk about like significant life events, things like loss of a loved one, moving is a big one, divorce, obviously. But things that form us as kids, I think something that seems to be a recurring theme among our guests is a parent having a business that struggled.
Sure. No question. And we see a lot of students coming to the McFerrin Center whose parents are entrepreneurs, successful or otherwise. And, there's a natural tendency to want to follow or emulate your parents. And it's always intriguing to understand whether a child of an entrepreneur truly understands the challenges, the struggles, and even the failures that their parents may have gone through.
Right. And the nature of that world is such that the thing about entrepreneurship in terms of lifestyle is that the swings are so big. The swings are so big. And we as humans have kind of set up our jobs, so to speak, to have a certain level of stability. Obviously, at some point there is no stability, but because the world is just not that way. But entrepreneurship seems to kind of embrace the instability as it is. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but embrace to play at that frontier where you just embrace whatever the market throws at you, I guess. Does that make sense?
And a tolerance of that risk and that unknown.
Exactly right.
It's less about perhaps mitigating that risk, and more about learning how to tolerate it, learning how to continue functioning when others might be paralyzed to move. And you're right. It is an instability that you have to learn to be comfortable with. Otherwise, you're just constantly at a state of stress and at a level where you might not be able to move forward.
What do you think is the most important thing that entrepreneurs understand, or the best one weird trick that they use to get comfortable with that kind of risk in their lives?
I think if I had to put a pin on it, I would push them to accept that they need to start with a problem versus a solution. So many times an inventor gets so excited about an innovation that they've had, an idea that no one else has had, and that's where the nexus of the process may start for them.
Yes.
I would rather,
I like that word.
Yeah, I would rather entrepreneurs focus strictly on the challenges, focus on what's not working in the daily routine that they wish were improved, that they themselves wish I didn't have to do this, or I wish this was easier, cheaper, better, whatever that facet is, by really embracing and understanding a depth of the challenge, then I trust that especially our Texas A&M entrepreneurs are going to be innovative enough to create the right solution to that. Mm-hmm. But if they'll focus on the problem first versus a solution first, that's the one thing that I would at least challenge them to start on.
In economic terms, would it be fair to characterize that as think more about the demand than the supply?
Sure.
Perhaps?
Yeah. The especially the demands that they recognize their customers are not being satisfied with, whatever that supply is now isn't supplying the solution that is preferred.
Yeah. You mentioned some of your journey at the institution here, and you talked earlier about things that you didn't want to do. You don't have to offer specifics in terms of where those things happened, but what did you learn in terms of functions that you didn't want to do?
So I'm fond of reminiscing on my days as a graduate teaching assistant.
Yeah.
I was over in the ag school.
Okay.
And I remember the very last class that I was teaching on behalf of the professor for the class.
Yeah.
And we wrapped that up, and I gathered up the student evaluation forms. Back in the day, yes, it was paper-based student evaluation forms. And I remember collecting all of those and preparing to submit them and thinking to myself, I'm glad that I don't have to deal with students anymore. They were awfully whiny, very entitled. They didn't understand my teaching. And I'm so very glad that I won't have to deal with, these petulant students anymore. And then I went to work with the faculty.
Yeah.
And I began to develop faculty startups and faculty commercialization plans as they were trying to get their technology, their baby that they have created in the lab, and try to get that into the marketplace. That made me tremendously excited to get back to working with students. All due respect for our faculty and the scientists that we have here, second to none. But what we have learned, and I think everyone would agree, is that scientists are typically scientists first and business people somewhere way on down the line.
Right, 17th.
Yes. So it has been wonderful getting to return to work with students. Some of the work that I do for the National Science Foundation is still with faculty, and I'm reminded of the unique challenges of working in faculty commercialization. Mm-hmm. But the students, they tend to have they tend to release so many inhibitions that a faculty member may or may not be able to do, and whether it's that risk tolerance, that lack of fear at the instability level, it's just so much more fun working with students. So I'm very glad to be back in the student realm.
How does the course of your job get put together? Like, what is your day-to-day, your week-to-week, your month-to-month look like?
Interestingly, the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship is actually very entrepreneurial. Mm-hmm. So we chase opportunities when we find them. We recognize problems and challenges, whether that's in entrepreneurship for students, entrepreneurship as a discipline, if you will, or maybe an art. Yeah. We recognize a lot of gaps, and we pursue those solutions that we can provide. What that leads me and the rest of our team to do is to chase down very interesting one-off type of opportunities until we can tell whether this is actually value add or it's simply not appropriate for our mission. So what the day-to-day with the McFerrin Center for me right now involves a lot of the student programming that we do. We have well over 30 programs that will offer students an experience in entrepreneurship, and that's important to us. We currently don't have a major or a degree in entrepreneurship at Texas A&M, and there's actually a lot of college campuses that don't offer that. What we do have to offer are experiences where students of any major That's the real challenge, because entrepreneurs come from every corner of campus.
That's true.
And in fact, most of the entrepreneurial teams that we see are not all business majors or even all engineers. What we find is that the multidisciplinary teams that come from various backgrounds that have those various interests and certainly different skill sets.
Shouts to diversity.
It makes these teams so much more likely to succeed, whether it is in this solution that they're creating or whatever solution may come up in the future. So by offering these experiences, we give them the chance to be in the melting pot. They find they have these collisions with other students that otherwise they probably wouldn't have on campus.
Yeah.
And we offer them a platform to try and create a solution to a problem that we try and help them focus on. So with those programs, that can mean some things as short as a 3-day startup, where it's just a weekend. Maybe it's even just a networking event where they can cross paths, have these collisions, and begin to form around a team or a solution. We can have semester-long or 2-semester-long programs at Startup Aggieland, but each one is designed to try and offer something different for a time frame, a passion, an interest, whatever that is that might attract somebody to say, well, I'm not sure if I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not even sure what entrepreneurship actually is, but I would like to go through this experience. I'd like to spend a weekend with other innovators. I'd like to understand what it's like to actually launch a business. And if they can walk away from any one of our programs with that skill set, hopefully with an understanding that, oh, okay, it's not so mysterious. It's certainly not frightening. It actually was a little bit of fun. Then we can start them down the path of, let's find a real problem. Let's create a solution to that problem. And perhaps we can create a business from that.
What questions do you teach them to ask in looking for a problem? Because there are a million problems out there.
Sure.
What makes you pick that one?
So I don't know that the broad search for a problem is exactly the right path. That may be a better path for a researcher, a scientist. What I like to do is to push someone in their world, their behavior. What's a problem to them? And it's fantastic that so many of our students want to create solutions. They want things faster. They want it easier.
Sure.
Why do we do this way? That seems dumb. That doesn't make any sense to me. Why don't we fix that? It's those behaviors that can lead to identification of not only the problem, but potentially moving toward the solution. Now, the real challenge to me is making sure, is that a problem just for you and your roommates, you and your family and friends? Is that circle so small that it's a unique problem only to you, so that maybe you're going to create a solution and maybe there aren't enough customers out there for this to be a business? So let's stop right there and let's understand whether other people have this same problem.
Okay.
We do a lot of things. That's our principles of customer discovery. Great.
Right.
You might have identified a problem for you, for your roommate, for a small circle. Let's figure out just how big that circle is and how urgent that need is. Maybe it really, really, really bothers you, but me, it's not that big a deal.
Something struck me as interesting a second ago. We cut something and then we jumped back in, and you said it the exact same way the second time that you did the first time. Yeah. It sounds like you spent some time in radio or possibly in TV.
I have done some radio time, not a DJ. Everyone kind of assumes that the only job in radio is DJing, but I never wanted to wake up that early in the morning. No, I did voiceover advertising and was called upon to be the guy behind the radio who's selling you whatever it was. And I had fun with it. It's an easy gig, to be honest. I talk for a living. But I had to give that life up because you may have noticed that I do have a bit of a Texan accent, and the folks I was working for said, "Listen, Blake, we love your work, but we can't sell you outside the state, so you're limited in your opportunities." So I had to move on to something else.
I like your accent.
Thank you.
You talked about sets of one-offs basically where you try to find a specific thing. It's very entrepreneurial, as you said. There's within the campus, you look around for, there's an opportunity here, there's an opportunity there, and you kind of bring it along until you say, okay, this is something we can transition into either something more permanent or something that will at least have sort of a longer shelf life. There's more work to be done here. You talked a second ago about the questions that you encourage people to ask in looking at problems in terms of what can be solved entrepreneurially. So the question now is, when you are looking at opportunities to interface with the rest of the university, to interface with either the business school or other departments and so forth, what do you look for there in terms of being able to synthesize something that is meaningful for the Center for Entrepreneurship? Does that question make sense?
I think so. So I think what you're asking is, how do we understand exactly what our customer needs?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
And especially when someone who is a student, perhaps, let's say distracted with their coursework.
Sure.
Right? How is a student supposed to present to us, this is my need in entrepreneurship, and I'd like someone to solve that? So that is a challenge, because entrepreneurship is also a highly customized process. So especially the support, or if you want to say the teaching, training of entrepreneurship, probably should be highly customized to each individual team, company, problem, solution. Everything's a little bit different.
Because it's all about imposing structure.
Yes.
You're forming something out of nothing.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Go ahead.
And so having an understanding of our partners across campus, whether that's in Mays or the iSchool, engineering, all of these other constituencies have their students and their students' best interests at heart and at mind. And what I hope they're also doing is customer discovery on what it is their students need. Mm-hmm. So what we aim to do is to understand who's already providing something. What's our competitive landscape, if you will? Who already has a solution for a student need out there? And where those gaps are, wherever the white space is, if we can work with these other constituents across campus, if we can partner for different experiences for their students, for all students, creating these connections between the colleges, between students in those colleges, almost to the point where it literally doesn't matter which college you're in. It's interesting what you are majoring in, and it's interesting what your passion is to learn about or to create a career. But what we want to know is, where are the gaps that perhaps your home college isn't providing that experience, and what could we do to help supplement, to partner, to collaborate on that experience.
That's very compelling. One of the ironies here is that people talk about entrepreneurship all the time as this sort of inherently lonely process. And it sounds like, from the way you're describing this, the process of teaching people to be entrepreneurs is all about connections and relationships.
No, it absolutely is. It is a lonely experience. My argument is that it shouldn't be.
Okay. Let's talk more about this.
Okay, so one of the we're starting up Howdy Week at the beginning of the semester, sure. And everything the students from Fish Camp on are bombarded with opportunities to not be lonely.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And by finding that interest and pulling on that thread and tugging them into some sort of community, regardless of the size or the focus or emphasis of that community, they can truly engage in their educational experience outside the classroom and doing all of the things that we think the college experience should be for them. As an entrepreneur, the tendency is to crawl back in your cave and work on your solution and develop your company and do all of these things on your own, because this is your passion. That's your hobby, if you will. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What we aim to do is to make sure that we pull them, we tug that thread. If entrepreneurship and innovation are the threads that are connecting these two students, there is absolutely no reason that those two students shouldn't also be connected in an experience, in a program, toward a common goal, even if their companies have nothing to do with each other, completely different markets or industries or whatever they are aiming to solve. The problems don't have to be connected, but the entrepreneurs should be. And what we see with especially the successful post-career entrepreneurs is that they recognize, I could have done this faster, I could have done it cheaper, I would have been more successful, I would have failed better had I had that support network. That just like in all careers, having that network of people who are of the same mind, trying to lift each other in their individual success, but as a collective, that's what we aim to provide in our experiences.
Over the course of your work, what's the most important thing that you've learned in kind of leading this process for the business school, for the university, for the center? What is the thing that you thought would work that has not worked? What was the thing that you thought would never work that has gone crazy?
So I think one of the most important things has to be this truly interdisciplinary approach. Yeah, which is anyone can talk about the challenges across a university. The way that we engage students is all very different according to our own college mission and the students in that college. And so this interdisciplinary approach has been probably one of the biggest challenges. It is a wonderful challenge to have because I've been around the university enough to be involved in initiatives that are siloed by design and probably with intentionality to keep that silo within the silo and keep everyone to engage everyone along a similar pathway. I think the things that have surprised me is when the student leaders come forward with their own opportunities, with their own challenges, with perhaps even a program of their own to say, this is something we need, and I'm not going to necessarily ask Blake to fix that for us. Let's just create our own solution to this. A great example is 3-Day Startup. So 3-Day Startup was a concept that we didn't even create here on campus. It was created at another campus. We partnered and borrowed the concept and began to roll it out here. And within, I think we're now in our at least our 10th year of the program. Within the first year or two, the students began to take over the program and began to tweak it and turn it and run it their own way to the point that outside of the mentoring that we offer on a weekend, crash course boot camp for entrepreneurship, outside of the mentoring component that we offer, there's no adult involvement at 3-Day Startup at all. They plan the entire thing, they coordinate the entire thing, they teach. The ones that have gone through the modules now go forward and teach that in the next section. So the tendency of our students to want to take a role in leadership, even when it's not just about their business, their success, whatever their passion is, they have this desire to actually lend or to pay it forward to students that haven't had that experience. So I think that's been one of the keys to success, and it was completely accidental. In fact, we had no designs on allowing students or even engaging students in the process of make this your program and run with it. So that one's been tremendously successful. We're beginning to encourage that process with any number of our other programs and making sure that this peer-to-peer growth cycle, the continuum goes along so that we can make sure that these programs are offering exactly what the students need.
What about Startup Aggieland?
So Startup Aggieland is actually a really great story of its birth. So one of the jobs that I had here at Texas A&M was actually running the research park. I was in charge of the real estate there. I didn't necessarily like that job. I had very, very little experience in real estate, certainly real estate of that magnitude. But I did have the inside track on some of the opportunities there at the park. There was a program that was taking up the space that is currently Startup Aggieland, and that research program began to wind down, and they were going to move back to main campus where their labs were. And so I approached the vice president at the time and suggested, rather than simply refilling that space with some other tenant, what if we could build a student business incubator? Had no name for this place, had no real concept for it. And suddenly it was approved and the keys were handed over, and we had a space with no real, even an idea of what this space is going to look like, who's going to be there, what they're going to do there, anything. It was literally backwards from most planning, where you strategize on what you need and then you go find the space.
Sure.
So in its first 6-9 months, it was extremely dark and not much going on there. But the one thing that we did almost accidentally was ask a class to build that business plan for us. We simply asked, if you had a student business incubator on campus, what would it need? What would you do there? What would be its business model for the entrepreneurship experiences at Texas A&M? Class took an entire semester, wrote a really, really thick business plan for Startup Aggieland. I think if we had been able to invest in everything that they wanted in that plan, it would have been about a $10 or $15 million project. So it was it was certainly ambitious what the students want. But in that business plan, we began to detect nuggets of things that we had not expected. Things like, we really want mentorship, and we would like mentorship from our peers. So this notion of, yes, I'd love to talk to someone who is wildly experienced in business, maybe on the tail end of their career, somebody who can offer me insights that I would have no way of knowing. But I'd also like to know somebody who was doing what I'm doing last semester. I'd like to talk to someone who understands specifically and recently the challenges of being a student and trying to launch a business. And what do I need to know? What do I need to watch out for? What are the pitfalls specifically from a student? Plus, we learned that it's awfully intimidating for students to talk to a highly experienced mentor, someone who, nicest people in the world and ready to help. But so many students were intimidated by thinking, I'm going to ask a dumb question, or this is going to waste their time, and I don't want to do that. So we could minimize that intimidation factor if it's a sophomore talking to a freshman, a senior talking to a sophomore. So that approach was novel and unexpected. And so rather than building out a Startup Aggieland that had all the resources you could possibly need, computing and 3D printing and all of these builder makerspace type amenities, we focused on the mentorship. And to this day, now going on 5.5 years, Startup Aggieland is if nothing else, a community of entrepreneurial students who are seeking to build their entrepreneurial dreams, and a network of mentors, some of which are outside the university, many of which are outside the university. We've got about 275, maybe up to 300 mentors in a formal established network who have said specifically, I want to work with Aggie students who are trying to build a business. Here's my expertise, but I'm not limited to that. I don't have to talk to students that are going into a business that I know. I just like to work with students. We've also got a really deep pool of student mentors, those who are growing their business, the ones who have gone through 1, 2, 3 semesters at Startup Aggieland. They're re-engaging to welcome these new freshmen coming in, these other students who didn't realize that they wanted to be entrepreneurs or just curious, what is entrepreneurship? They can find an experience at Startup Aggieland, and they'll be surrounded with others who are saying, "Hey, let's work on your experience. Let's develop this together. Don't try and do this alone. Don't let this be a lonely experience, because I'm here to help you with that."
What's the best moment that made your heart soar in this whole process, or something that made you laugh? Or what's the emotional heart of this?
I actually get those warm fuzzies on, I won't say a regular basis, but with some frequency. And that's those moments where a student who has come to us with absolute certainty that their business will be a success, and they probably just think they need additional funding, maybe an IP attorney to help them with all I need are these pieces because I know it's going to work. I know this is going to be a success. That's all I need from Startup Aggieland. When those students get involved in our process and they talk to these mentors and they recognize that they had only observed a problem that was unique to a couple of people, they had only worked through a solution that would be useful to a small group. And when they can stand up in front of a room full of their peers, other entrepreneurs, including mentors, when they can stand up and embrace the failure that they were absolutely wrong. I was completely wrong about this.
Yeah.
This was not going to work, and I couldn't see that. So thankfully, I have learned through this process, and I'm going to pivot to this, or maybe entrepreneurship ain't for me, and I'm going to go back to my major. These types of lessons and the course corrections that we can help make, they happen constantly, and that's really a high for me. Because our job is about educating. It's not about any idea walks in the room, into the door, I'm going to make sure it's a successful business. We can't be about that. That's not entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's not how the world works.
Yeah, that's not how the world works. So when someone who is extraordinarily confident that their idea is going to work, their business is going to be huge, when they can embrace the fact that I was completely wrong, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Sure.
That's a big admission to make. And when they can celebrate that, and we all celebrate with them because they haven't gone down a path that was ultimately going to lead to disastrous failure. Instead, they have pivoted somewhere where they can find success. And that's the impact that gives me those highs.
It seems like a lot of entrepreneurship and, and specifically entrepreneurs, a lot of those stories are kind of redemption stories.
That's a very good way of putting it.
A lot of entrepreneurs have lost many times before. Yeah. And then they win, and then sometimes they lose again.
Right.
And then, and that's, I guess that goes back to the swings, maybe.
Yeah, it does. And I think the interesting thing that you'd find with the redemption stories is how almost unexpected it was. Right. So these entrepreneurs would never intentionally chase down something that they knew was going to fail. So it's always an unexpected failure.
Yeah.
And so the redemption component is truly redeeming, right? Because they had some level of certainty that, well, this has to work. This is why I'm going to pursue this.
Right.
When it doesn't, and they can be redeemed from that, that's a true enlightening moment.
Right. It's redemption and epiphany all kind of rolled into the same.
Yeah, that's right.
Instant. When you teach people to go outside their own circle to do market research effectively, to say, what is the problem that you and I and Kyle all have, and we need to figure out if other people are having this problem. How do you teach them to get that information?
No.
Are they just going and doing surveys? How do they do the process?
Here's the fun fact about what that involves is literally learning how to talk to humans. We call it talking to humans.
Okay.
We teach talking to humans.
Yeah.
We disarm all the students with the ridiculous notion of, once upon a time, humans did have to communicate face to face.
Oh, no.
Right,
We
right.
Don't,
we don't want to do that. Here. We have some tactics, and this is, interestingly enough, this is exactly what I teach for the National Science Foundation in their I-Core program. Okay. We have these tactics of customer discovery. We call them interviews, but in reality, it's designed that way so that we can help entrepreneurs ask the right questions of people to get the insights that they're seeking to understand without revealing the motivation behind it.
Okay.
So a marketing class might teach someone how to describe a product or show a product and get reaction from you about how do you like the design of this cup? Does it look flimsy? Do you even like the colors? These are all observations of an existing, you are locked in on what the product is. And you're probably trying to understand what I want you to say about that product.
Okay.
If we can,
I do like this cup.
You
by
like
the way.
Cup? Okay.
Yeah, I do. I like the beans like flying out. For our listeners, if you can't see what we're doing, go to the YouTube channel and look at this coffee cup. But I like the swirls. I like the color scheme. I don't know exactly what it is about how it all works together, but I do like this product.
To me, it feels a little messy. I mean, the coffee and the beans are just scattered everywhere.
Yeah, that is true. It is flying everywhere.
I have one specific purpose: keep the coffee inside this cup.
Inside the cup, instead of flinging it all over the place.
So what we aim to do is to teach entrepreneurs how to ask questions that would get you to reveal what your challenge is, what your problem, and especially the urgency of that problem without you understanding what I'm trying to solve.
Right.
Okay. With scientists, with faculty members who are going through I-Core, this is tremendously hard because what do they talk about to humans? They talk about their work. They talk about the science that they're creating. They talk about it's almost a fair and free exchange of this is my idea, what's yours,
right? And
that's the way that they communicate. So getting them to sit down with someone who is likely someone not in academia, someone not at the level of prestige and honor that these researchers may be at. And asking them truly, what challenge are you facing in this specific area of your job?
Right.
Or more importantly, tell me a story when this didn't go right. Help me understand the day in the life where it went wrong for you.
Tell me a story. I like that.
Understanding not only the mechanics of why something went wrong, but what was the waterfall of reaction based on that. When that went wrong, did the entire production line have to shut down?
Yeah.
Did you face your manager or was this a fireable offense? Is this something you were worried about whether you had a job the next day?
Okay.
Or is this something that you've already kind of created a workaround? Yep, this happens 10 times a day. We go in here and flip this switch and change this, and it's not great, but we've figured out how to work with it. Those types of conversations don't bias you with what is it that my product looks like and how would you change it to make it better.
Yeah.
Instead, it helps reveal to me, this is a problem.
Yeah.
This is its level of importance, or these are the solutions that they're using now. Can mine be better?
Okay. So maybe the best way to capture the distinction you're describing, then tell me if this is right. You really want to make the conversation more about them. You want to make them focus more on themselves than on anything you would be providing for them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we don't teach sales. I don't want to know about products.
Yeah.
I don't want to know what your solution is, because if you've created that solution without truly understanding the motivations of your potential customer, you're probably going to have to make some changes to that solution. Mm-hmm. So it almost doesn't matter what your solution is right now. It doesn't matter what the product is. It doesn't matter the features that you've created to put it. It doesn't matter until you understand what's going to motivate that customer to say, that solves my problem. Take my money because I want that solution.
Yeah. Yeah. What are, in that process, you bring in a student, other than maybe the sort of broad concept of myopia, myopia. What's the most common mistake, or I don't want to use the word shortcoming because it sounds maybe a little condescending, but what's the biggest problem that you run into other than a student thinking this idea will surely succeed when they haven't asked all the right questions yet?
Right. So other than that, which usually is
that's the one,
the cornerstone
right.
of challenges and issues, I think that entrepreneurs, especially if they have not experienced it, once they've experienced it, it becomes almost obvious, and many of them are just embarrassed that they didn't realize it at the time. But the inexperienced entrepreneur has no idea how much work has to go into creating, building, not just a business, but actually building a customer base.
Yeah.
Because the allure of entrepreneurship seems to be, at least on some level, I don't have a boss.
Right.
I can make decisions.
Yeah.
I don't have to ask permissions for things. When in reality, the customers are
all of those things.
Yes. They will demand exactly that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can build and decide anything you want to and simply not have a business to be able to sell a product or generate any revenue. So rather than thinking this is an easier way, or let's say there's going to be less work if I get to decide all these things.
Right.
That's asinine. It actually is. You are actually taking on all of that responsibility.
Yeah.
The customer gets to be your boss. The customer gets to decide these things. And especially in the earliest stages, you have to do literally whatever it is the customer wants.
Right. Marketing, operations,
all of it,
finance,
all of it.
HR.
So I think that, and it's easy to try and warn somebody this is going to be a lot of work. This is going to be tough. This is going to be higher stress and certainly greater risk than if you just took on a job with a boss and followed a process. But I don't think true entrepreneurs are necessarily wired to hear that, embrace it, absorb it, understand it until they've gone through it. But then you ask any successful entrepreneur, and I don't even care how you define success, you ask them whether this was more work than getting a job, and I guarantee you what the answer would be.
You talked earlier about failing, and I know failing forward is a thing that gets passed around here from time to time. Let's talk a little bit about embracing failure and failing forward.
I love the concept. The Maxwell book, Failing Forward, is really, really a great book. Mm-hmm. But the principles in it are not, in my mind, these are not revolutionary. This is not almost unexpected.
Right.
What's key to me is this notion that we as humans are uncomfortable with failure, even admitting it, much less experiencing it. So the concept of failing forward and having us all embrace failure, celebrate failure.
Yeah.
This is antithetical.
You talked about that earlier.
Absolutely. When a failure can lead to a repositioning that has a greater likelihood of success than the previous path, then we better stand up and clap and celebrate this, because we are recognizing a new and better opportunity for success than where you were before. But this is all very uncomfortable and almost unnatural for us. So the failing forward concept is again one of those things where we can say it and I can coach it. Hey, we're going to celebrate failure. I'll literally stand up and cheer if you figure out that I was wrong. I need to do this.
Right.
But until you experience it, you just have to trust me that we are going to have failure. We are going to celebrate that failure. We're not going to make excuses for it. We're not going to expect ourselves to be the special child that doesn't fail. And we're going to absolutely understand the learnings from that failure so that you just don't continue to fail. And it's searching for the word. The irony sometimes is how certain entrepreneurs will become so comfortable with failure that they'll just try anything. That there's absolutely no structure to this because I know I'm going to fail, so I'll just would like to put some framework around the learning so that you fail a little less severely each time, but recognizing that everyone's going to fail and learning how to fail forward into learnings and redirection that you can help yourself avoid those failures in the future. That's what the failing forward concept is all about.
Then the challenge of economizing on this process, as you just alluded to, is figuring out how to balance the idea of comfort with failure with, no, we still want this to, in the end, be a successful process, and maybe figuring out how to get someone to develop their instinct for this idea can work, but it has not worked yet, versus this idea maybe can't work. Mm-hmm. I don't know where to take that, but it seems like there's something important in honing the BS detector in our own brains, and especially for entrepreneurs, because they have to say, the whole point of having a vision is to be able to say, I can see a way to get this to the spot where it will work, despite the fact that there is no proof of that anywhere in the world.
Right. So you said a good word, or an interesting phrase about developing an instinct. I do think that there is an instinct that can't be left alone, that actually needs to be nurtured, right? It's just not a native or natural instinct that, okay, you've got it and I don't, so that makes you a successful entrepreneur and me not.
Yeah.
What has to happen is the process of failure has to hone that instinct toward almost to an anthropologic response to, okay, that hasn't worked in the past, so I have to do this differently.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I will certainly face failure again.
Okay. The McFerrin Center has showcased companies like, Essentium, Einstein Movers, and Paulson Designs when judging an Aggie pitch competition or evaluating a new company. What do you look for?
I wish there were that silver bullet. That's like asking an investor, how do you pick the company to invest in?
Sure.
There's no script. There's no recipe for this. I think some of the criteria, we've even talked some around the notion of problem identification, the magnitude of that problem, the likelihood of a solution.
Yeah.
So there can't simply be, well, we found this problem. We don't know if there's a solution, but I think we can make a solution. And really, it is about the composition of the entrepreneurial team. So,
which you talked about before.
I realized that. So let's take as an example Shark Tank, which is focused on the drama that they can create on screen. That's what their viewership wants to see. And it's fascinating to see how some really, really bad ideas that don't solve anyone's problem or don't solve it well. Some really, really bad presenters that might have a great idea, but they can't convey that to the audience, especially to the investors. These all make it onto a show and lend the misunderstanding that as long as I have these components, I should be able to get in front of investors, and if Mr. Wonderful sees this or that, then I can be successful. So while that's just a snapshot of a process, that snapshot is almost bastardized from the reality, because it does take a almost impossible combination of the right person with that right instinct you talked about, with the right problem identified, with the right magnitude of problems so that there could be a business behind this.
Right.
And, oh, by the way, they have to have created the right solution that can be monetized, that can be scaled, that can address this solution. And by the way, might be competitive in a market where others will try to also solve that problem. So you see the alignment of the stars is practically impossible.
Right.
And to look at any one thing or even a pattern of those things, I think you might be looking forever. without ever identifying exactly the right one. So my crystal ball is about, various shades of gray around each of those potential important criteria, and trying to find where there are gaps, where there are weaknesses. How can we help to develop that so that we're a little bit closer to the perfect startup?
You said something interesting about Shark Tank. My experience and my struggle as a writer has been, since the day I got started, it's that efficiency and economy is the enemy of narrative, conflict, drama. All of those, story is built around conflict and adversity, and basically you have to set the odds up just right, and every scene is about conflict, whether it's you and me having a disagreement about something, me struggling against myself, you struggling against the world, whatever it may be, Kyle dancing us all around on puppet strings, or whatever it may be. Every scene is conflict. And as soon as the conflict is over, the audience doesn't want to watch it anymore.
Turns out.
So once the conflict is resolved, okay, let's move on to the next conflict. Yeah. So then something like Shark Tank, and this is super, super obvious in reality TV, where the drama is, where they look to cut stuff in such a way that people look like idiots. People who are not idiots look like idiots. But I guess that plays to one of the things that's inherent in entrepreneurship. Not that people who are not idiots look like idiots, although that may also happen sometimes too. But the idea that, as you just said, there is no perfect entrepreneurial situation. And the part of it that's really compelling is actually the part of it that is least comfortable for the entrepreneur as it's happening. It's kind of like tragedy now is comedy later. Like we got ourselves stuck by the side of the road in Europe, and we're going to laugh about it in 10 years, but we're not laughing right now.
Right.
And so those things are always at odds with each other, I guess.
Maybe perhaps that's the magic in an environment like Shark Tank, that they are able to draw out that conflict in a very, very precise and time-limited manner to be able to reveal. And I will say, right, so while it has created a misleading view of entrepreneurship, it has also instigated a great deal of interest. That person is on stage making a fool of themselves because they must be an idiot. So maybe it's not that hard for me to be an entrepreneur.
True enough.
A little bit of danger in there, but it certainly has added a fire and excitement around entrepreneurship, and given a lot of people the notion that maybe I could do that too.
Yeah. Well, that thinking I can do that is almost always good.
Right.
Let's move to rapid fire. What do you consider your most valuable failure?
So I bet a lot of people may not realize that I did some community theater once upon a time. I really, really enjoyed the stage right here in Bryan, the theater company, Bryan College Station.
Yeah.
I had a stint of probably 4 or 5 years where I was in practically every show. I loved musical theater. I really thought that I might have a skill for this.
Yeah.
And I thought, maybe Broadway is calling. Maybe I should head to the big lights of New York. And fortunately, I never made that leap. I auditioned at a few of the larger theaters, Houston area, recognized that my place is community theater at best, or perhaps I should just, count that as one of my hobbies and leave it at that.
Yes.
What I realized, at the time, I was kind of lured by the notion of the bright lights of Broadway, or anywhere for that matter. And I think that I would have been miserable in that lifestyle, whether successful or not, whether I could have made an acting career or anything like that. I think that lifestyle would have been miserable for this country kid from Central Texas to try try and pursue.
Just the big city of it? Or I know this is rapid fire, but briefly, why?
So I was unaware, much like I described the entrepreneurs being unaware of the hard work. Sure. I was unaware just how hard actors have to work even to find jobs. Yes. And then congratulations, you've got a gig that you do 7 times a week that you get paid very little for, and you are you're expected to be at top peak performance every single day, every single show. And when you're not, you can be fired very, very easily. It's a high stress environment that I thought, well, I love being on stage and I love performing and I love singing. So how hard can that be? It would have been terribly hard for me.
Very difficult. What's your favorite stage show?
Favorite stage show is Les Mis. Okay. I hands down, it was one of the first that I saw, probably in early high school, and fell in love. Still one of my favorites. I've taken my son to see it, and he's an addict as well.
Nice. What do you think is people's biggest misconception of you?
I think that a lot of people would be surprised to know that I'm actually fairly introverted. Oh. While I feel comfortable at the microphone, at the podium, doing things like this, I would much prefer to avoid most networking events and to be engaged. I teach a lot of this talking to humans and being comfortable in communication and conversation, and all the while it's terribly uncomfortable for me.
Then maybe you're the best person to teach it.
Yeah,
because you understand the discomfort.
Perhaps. Yeah.
If you could have anyone as a mentor for one day, who would it be?
At the risk of this sounding patronizing or pandering, I really wish that I could spend another day with Artie McFerrin. So Artie, class of 65, he passed away in 2017, and I had only gotten to know him maybe 6 months prior. Spent a little bit of time with him, but he was already in pretty poor health, and I didn't get to really understand the depths of this man who I think, outside of his family, I think his highest priority genuinely was Texas A&M University. He wanted this university to be the greatest university on this planet, and would do whatever he could to make this university that great. And his entrepreneurial experience, his life experience, everything, I would just love to have another day with Artie.
Most important piece of business or career advice that our listeners might not have heard before, just broadly speaking.
So I've actually been asked a question like this before, and I tend to resort back to my country boy roots. So my father, my grandfather, even my brother, they're always fond of providing advice, whether that's in business or life or whatever. One of the things that I can't remember which one of them, maybe all three, said to me that has stuck with me in terms of business especially is you got to fish where the fish are. Okay. Sounds ridiculous. Sounds, a corny Texan saying. What that actually means to me is that, as we've talked about, I could have the fastest boat with the best fishing gear. I could understand the weather perfectly. I could know all of these things and actually align all of these things for the perfect fishing trip. But as any professional or non-fisherman would tell you, that they don't come across the lake to your lure. Mm-hmm. You actually have to go to them. And so the notion that success may find you, that customers will come find me, that's the greatest thing, right? I put up an app or a web page and the customers will come find me.
Right.
Absolutely not. The notion that you've got to go, there has to be all of these components, and then you have to take it to the marketplace.
Right.
You got to fish where the fish are.
Field of Dreams did entrepreneurs a great disservice.
Yes, it did.
Do you have anyone you would like to send good bull?
Absolutely. So the entire team at McFerrin Center, we laugh a lot about how everyone says, "My God, you people are just so busy. Y'all do so many things. You're constantly. I can't believe you keep up with this." And it's true, and we're proud of that. What I don't think many people realize is just the quality of the work, the quality of the people. That team is so solid to be able to pull together all of this stuff that we do and continue to seek out new opportunities. They're my favorite entrepreneurs to work with, and good bull for everyone involved at the McFerrin Center. And I would invite all of your listeners to get more involved with this, to see just how magical it is working with not just our team, but working with the student entrepreneurs we have around campus.
Good bull to them. I'd like to send some good bull to our friends over at the iSchool, Jennifer Briggs, Dr. Beth Duermeyer, Andy Morris, of course, Emily Finbow. They are good friends of the show, and we are moving our relationship forward with the iSchool, and we appreciate the opportunity to work with them. So good bull to all of you. Blake, thanks for coming to talk with us.
This has been fantastic. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, it was really fun learning from you.
Good.
Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to stay up to date on our latest videos, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to receive notifications. If you're in a rush or on the road, you can still join us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. If you want to learn more about us or our guests, please visit our website at mays.tamu.edu/podcasts. Also, please check out Mays Business School's academic programs. They're the sponsors of our show, and you can find them in the description. Thanks, and gig 'em.